think.
Are we on that?
I think we will be in a second. Well, we'll see. Just in case, let me take a look. Oh, yep, we are. There we go. Okay, all right. Let me get my water. And look at that. We want to watch us through that.
Oh,
But
we are there.
that's how we should. It's like we're on TV.
And we're on now.
And we're now.
Hello.
Hello.
Everybody out there in Facebook.
So what's up, everybody, and all the live lands? I'm Josh Steen, resident director here at Corinth Theater Arts. My very good friend Clay Nails, longtime volunteer, president of our board of directors here at Corinth Theater Arts, and it's our next version of Going Off book. So some things to take about before we get down to some fun stuff. First of all, Frozen Junior is going really, really well. We've been having a lot of online rehearsals with our students, keeping those up. Lots of good stuff going on there. The dates are moving. We're not going to open in the next couple of days or a couple of weeks, but the dates will move. We'll tell you when those dates will be. We're waiting on school schedules and things like that right now. And we'll announce those dates as soon as we possibly can. We look forward to doing that here at the Crossroads Playhouse. So 10 dates for you to choose from. You'll find out more about that when we know, because we don't know yet. Second of all, Chicago, we're really looking forward to that. We need to have one more audition and a callback, and then Chicago is going to proceed as normal. We're really, really hoping that after the governor's shelter-in-place order, things can slowly but surely get back to normal.
And they're all not dead.
And we're all not dead, or at least corona'd.
Maybe Corona will be dead.
Yeah, maybe it will be dead by then.
The virus, not the beer.
No, we need that beer. That's a good beer. So once things kind of start kicking, Chicago's going to get up and rolling. We're excited about that. I had mentioned before, but again, we will not be producing Tennessee Williams' Summer and Smoke. I love that show. We're just going to move on and say it's a thing that we're not doing. But what we were going to do as well with our season was do a production with 6 one-act shows. 6 one-act shows directed by 6 different people, including him, David Ives, on the timing. So we're going to do a full production of that. Instead, I think we're going to try to use some of our software that we're using for our digital rehearsals and do live versions of this show. So we're going to work on that over the next week and get back to you about that. So don't count yourself out on the timing, especially if you're one of those that we talked to about being involved with that. Clay Nell's directorial debut, definitely not a thing you want to miss. Oh, okay, before we go any farther, we've been showing you some of our artwork from our season, this current season. So our lovely yard sign from Physical the Musical Junior, which our physical cast was a whole lot like our current season here at CT. Everything was going along really, really well, and then a hurricane blew through town, so all kinds of craziness. We loved those kids. They worked really, really hard. They were very flexible. We talk about being flexible a lot here at CTA. The best quality you can have as a person and a volunteer, and they were very flexible. And a lot of those kids are being just as flexible right now with Frozen Junior. So much love to our the Musical Junior cast. As we get ready to go into this weird period where things get even slower, I think it's a good opportunity for us just to say how much we love our community and our community friends, partners, our businesses. If you still shop with a local business, shop with them online, do that. Our friends at Emerson Kate Boutique that were friends with us during Still Magnolias, you can buy their stuff online if that's your thing. Our very good friends at Lauren's Bake Shop has a drive-through window open. Be nice. still go and use these businesses if you can in the ways that they provide. Just be nice. I think now is a great time for everyone to have like this list of house rules that don't exist for pandemics, but everyone should be nice. Everyone be nice, and we'll all a lot better, I think. A couple other things. Our friends at Playhouse on the Square in Memphis, Tennessee, they're our regional professional company around. They're just as old as we are. They have had their season a little bit amended as well. Michael Detroit, fantastic guy, and the executive producer there at Playhouse on the Square, went live today to talk about their season. I'm a season ticket holder of the Orpheum. Emily and I are, and we really enjoy the Orpheum, but I almost love going to see shows at Playhouse even more because I end up like getting to know these people, and I've known several people in productions there. A friend of ours, Daniel Nelson, his family's from Corinth, is set to play Seymour Krelborn in their production of Little Shop of Horrors, which the dates have been moved to late June, early July. Really excited about that. Really glad that they'll get to finish out their season at Playhouse on the Square. Our friends at Theater Memphis are undergoing some huge renovations right now to totally renovate their entire campus, and they're still pushing forward with that, getting ready for their 100th season. Theater Memphis is incredible, and they're a community theater over almost 100 years old, in the midst of a massive campaign.
And you can't take it with you this year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's outrageously funny and something I've wanted to do here for a long time.
Yeah, it's I really love the mission that Theater Memphis has. They, the theater community in Memphis, which is just an hour away from us, their community starts in Collierville and extends over into West Memphis, Arkansas, and none of them treat it like it's a competition. It's a big community family. The community theaters, the regional players, it's really the Memphis theatrical community is amazing. We're looking forward to going and support when this is all over. So if you can do that, that's great. We want you to support us as well. We're really lucky. Clay and I was having this conversation today about how kind of lucky we were that Steel Magnolias really ended right as we got into the seriousness of COVID-19, and we feel relatively lucky. We're going to be displaced a couple of weeks with Frozen Junior and maybe Chicago. We don't get to do our big other Southern Dramatic Classic of the year, but we had Steel Magnolias. I feel pretty good about that. We feel incredibly lucky. I know that there are thousands of my colleagues all across the country who are just stuck. They don't know what to do, and we kind of hit this at the right time. We know that we're lucky, but we still need your support. We still have some very strong shows to finish our season out with that we really look forward to. If you go to wheretheatercomesalive.com and find the donate link, you can donate us $5, $500, $5,000, whatever it is you think. And more importantly than just cutting off checks for random dollar amounts, when we do announce we're back to normal, we want to see you. We're really looking forward to doing a Broadway review. This guy right here is going to make his real musical theater
singing and dancing
debut. I have a really good number picked out for you. We'll talk about that when we're done.
Looking forward to that.
Clay and I were in this really interesting production of Kiss Me Kate, where I think it was your first time you were ever in a musical.
Yeah, probably should have been the last.
It was the first time you were in a musical, and then you took a long musical theater hiatus until the Rocky Horror. Until Bright Star last year.
Rocky Horror, which I don't.
Clay and I we had some very bit parts. Clay had like the bittest of parts in Kiss Me Kate, and I was an ensemble player, and he and I are just backstage 15 some odd years ago, just shooting the bull. The TV's on in the green room, and just kind of bopping along with the music that's going on. And
somebody missed their entrance, but nobody noticed.
Well, it was me. Well, he totally missed an entire scene. I actually missed up until the part where I had a solo number. I didn't have any pants on because I was standing around talking to Clay. I was changing costumes, slid right in, sang what I had to sing, and left. Our resident director at the time slid out after that show too, so I don't think she was planning to do it. She was planning to do it before, but Kiss Me Kate, that was a fun experience, and his musical theater debut. I'm really lucky that I've had a lot of amazing people come before me in this role, and to be perfectly honest, Katie Simons, that was the director of Kiss Me Kate, she's one of them. She gave me my first real foray into all of this, and I'm really, really lucky that one of those folks has taken an interest in me, and has been a real mentor to me as we rebuilt sort of our idea and our vision for CTA. Murray Chase got his start in theater here at Corinth Theater Arts, and is now the producing executive director of the country's largest community theater. They shut down in Venice, Florida several weeks ago to, just kind of wait. And Murray, who is not an on-camera guy by any stretch of the means, did a really nice video for their volunteers and their patrons at Venice Theater to kind of update them on the status of what was going on this week. And he had a really great message that I wanted to share with you. And it was, we look forward. He talked about their motto at Venice Theater is great stories well played. And he talked about how they looked forward to telling great stories and playing them well. And we do too. We look forward to seeing you here soon where theater comes alive. But we look forward. Murray's message is incredible during this time. We'll post a link to the video on our Facebook page. Some stuff that we're planning to work on over the next couple of weeks while we're in a kind of a little bit of a lull. First of all, Clay is here, so this is something he'll be interested in, and we're going to play a game with Clay. He doesn't know that yet, but we're going to play a game with Clay. We're going to introduce this next week in a YouTube series our No Fear Shakespeare. We've done Shakespeare off and on here at CTA for a long time, and we've kind of shied away from it the past couple. But we have a love for it. It's beautiful. It is what a lot of people know of theater.
First thing I ever did was Shakespeare. Played Macbeth in 2003.
You hear that? Just you wait. So there's this great misnomer about how Shakespeare is hard, how Shakespeare is difficult. It's really, really not. So I get asked a lot, what do I do as a director to help me, take my craft and perfect it. And there's this book that I read every 6 months called Backwards and Forwards for actors and directors both, to learn how to analyze a piece of work, a script, how you can take it and follow a series of cause and effect from the beginning of the play to the end, and then from the end of the play to the beginning. And they use Shakespeare's Hamlet to do it. And several years ago, I just began to fall more and more and more in love with Hamlet. Now, I did my 10 days and 10 dream bucket list roles, resident director challenge, but I stayed away from anything that wasn't musical theater related because I'm not that great of an actor, but I love the role of Hamlet. And so I think what we're going to do is this series is we're going to start with Hamlet. And maybe because we had looked to do a Shakespearean club in our upcoming season, we can use this as a spring forward to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take Shakespeare's Hamlet and use the No Fear Shakespeare and break it down. And what we're going to do is we're going to assign some roles. So if you would like to be involved, let us know. We'll connect via Zoom. We'll send you text. And we'll go from there. And what No Fear Shakespeare does is it takes Shakespearean works and breaks it down for you so that you can understand it. Now, Shakespearean literature was written, Shakespeare, or whoever Shakespeare really was, the culminative Shakespeare, wrote this so that the most common people could understand it. I think Hamlet's To Be or Not to Be is maybe one of the most, outside of anything from Romeo and Juliet or the Scottish play, Macbeth, is maybe the most recognizable Shakespeare.
Or all the world's a stage, or as you like.
Oh, right, or as you like it.
Jacques, not Jacques.
Jacques, and as you like it, maybe my favorite. So I'm going to read for you Hamlet's to be or not to be speech, and then show you how No Fear Shakespeare breaks it down. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. I won't give you the whole thing, but let me break that much of it down for you. The question is it better to be alive or dead? Is it nobler to put up with all the nasty things that luck throws your way, or to fight against all those troubles by simply putting an end to them once and for all? It's common sense approach to Shakespeare. I think that this is a series that both student and adult volunteers will enjoy, that we look to continue even after our shelter-in-place coronavirus break. So, because Clay Nels is here with me in person, I'd planned to do this the other day during our technical difficulties, but he had mentioned that his very first play here at Corinth Theater Arts was Macbeth. Everyone's scared of Macbeth. And Clay, in his first role ever on stage, said, you know what, I would like to be Macbeth. So we're going to play Complete the Line.
All right, here we go.
Clay is forever quoting his lines from Macbeth, and I just want to see if he can remember them well. So, from Act 1, Scene 6, Scene 7, Macbeth says this, and I wonder if you can complete this line. Now, this is in Macbeth's castle, so it's at the very beginning of the play. Right. Macbeth says, if it were done when 'tis done...
Then 'twere well that were done quickly, for 'tis...
If the assassination...
Could tremble up the...
Consequence
and with its surcease
success.
That
by this blow might be the
end all and be all.
But here, upon this bank and shoal of time. Weld, jump the life to come. But in these cases, we still have judgment here that we but teach.
Part of that was cut. Part of that speech was cut, I think, if I recall correctly. Okay. I'm not making excuses.
No, he's not. Read it. Read Act 1, Scene 7 of Macbeth, because he reads this really well.
If we're done when 'tis done, then for well it were done quickly. If the assassination can trammel up the consequence and catch with its surcease success, that but this blow might be the be all and the end all here. But here, upon this bank and shoal of time, will jump the life to come. But in these cases, we still have the judgment, but that we teach bloody instructions, which being taught return to plague the inventor. This even-handed justice commends the ingredients of our poison chalice to our own lips. He's here in double trust. First, as I am his kinsman and his subject, strong both against the deed. Then as his host, who should against his murderer shut the door, not bear the knife myself. Besides, this done his faculties so meek, hath been so clear in his great office, that his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet-tongued against the deep damnation of his taking off. And pity, like a naked newborn babe, striding the blast, or heaven's cherubim horsed upon the sightless couriers of the air, shall blow the horrid deed in every eye. That tears shall drown the wind, I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which o'erleaps itself, and falls on the other.
Once you learn something, you never really unlearn it. That's the thing that I've encountered as a director. So if you actually don't just memorize your lines, but you actually learn them, you take the time to ingrain them into your memory, do some in-depth character study, and connect with that character on some other level, then they're not just lines. You're actually speaking the words of Macbeth.
Yeah. And what Macbeth was really saying was, I probably shouldn't kill the king. I mean, he's related to me, he's my cousin, and he's here, my guest, but my wife keeps bugging me about it. So, I mean, what other choice do I have?
If you saw Steel Magnolias recently, or if you saw a production of Glass Menagerie a couple years ago, Leslie Bivens, that was Truvy, and Amanda Wingfield also played Lady Macbeth in our production of Macbeth several years ago. If you have the ability to convert a VHS to an M4A file, please tell me. I've got a VHS for you. Okay, No Fear Shakespeare, coming to you next week. What I would like to do is issue another challenge to you.
No.
If
Let me
there,
try one more.
okay, no, I have one more for you that I thought that would be good.
The two.
I have one from the beginning of Act 2. How now, my lord? Why do you keep alone? Of sorest fancies your companions making, using those thoughts which should indeed have died with them they think on? Things without all remedy should be without regard. What's done is done. We have scotched the snake, not kill it. We have scotched the snake,
We've got to
not
kill it.
She'll close.
She'll close and be herself.
Whilst our poor.
Whilst our. No, there's a line there somewhere that says, "My mind is my dear wife." Does that not come before that?
No, that's after.
That comes after that. The one that I was referring to is the scene immediately after Banquo is killed.
Oh,
When
okay.
when Macbeth says, "To be thus is nothing,
Okay.
but to be safely thus. Our fears in Banquo stick deep. It's he alone whose being I do fear him, his genius, his being my genius is rebuked, as it said Mark Antony's was by Caesar. He chid the sisters when they placed the name of king upon them, then bade them speak to him. Prophet like, they held him father to a line of kings, while upon my head they placed a fruitless crown and barren scepter in my grip."
Thence to be
Just
wrenched.
to be wrenched. That part we cut. When I say,
That's a good part too.
that is and
Clay still knows his Shakespeare.
the way that was staged was beautiful also, because Macbeth entered in the dark, the set open in the dark, sitting on his throne, crown on his head, and he takes the crown off and looks at it and he says, "To be thus is nothing, but to be safely thus."
Ooh. Was it the drop down flies
Yeah.
with the book that opened?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Katie was very dramatic. I did like it. Okay. So, I have another challenge for you. Some of you have said, "Oh, there are things that I would like to read and have never read, yada yada yada." I have two that I think I would like to challenge some of you to read. We are going to do at some point Waiting for Godot. We are, and I am not the greatest of actors, but I am going to be in Waiting for Godot with this guy right here, our good friend David Maxiden, and our other good friend Matthew Wood, and we're going to do Waiting for Godot. If you have never read Beckett's Waiting for Godot, I absolutely challenge you to do it this week. In the next 7 days, find a copy of it. If you can't, you can message us, and I'll get you a copy of Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot, even if I have to send you my own personal copy.
I mean, Beckett may have written this while being quarantined from some illness.
We don't know.
In France. Written initially in French, translated into English, not written again in English, but he translated it back to English, which I've always thought was interesting.
And this is gorgeous. A lot of the theater that I love the most is theater that's never going to make $1. Just isn't. That's not what we do. What we do, Waiting for Godot is gorgeous. If you've never read that, I challenge you to read it. And for some of you more advanced folks, I challenge you to read anything by Eugene O'Neill. And I'm going to read this week because it is maybe my favorite work by Eugene O'Neill, and it's very, very long, but it's very, very good. And yes, that is Kevin Spacey on the cover, The Iceman Cometh. If you have not read The Iceman Cometh, I absolutely challenge you to read it this week. Love to have an open forum discussion with you about Waiting for Godot or The Iceman Cometh. It is my challenge for you to read this. If you don't have a copy, I'll be happy to get you a copy of it. Incredible stuff. So continue with our theme of one recipe every time we do this from the most recognizable book in Carn Theater Arts history, The Critic's Choice, because it's a Friday and we're going into shelter at home measures.
I'm going to Holy Week also.
Yes, exactly. Well, this isn't about that, but because it's Friday, the other day I did have picked out a Swedish steak thing. Because it's Friday, I have this recipe for you folks who do partake that I hope you remember so that we can have together after our Broadway review, after we're back together. This is After Theater Punch, and this was submitted to Critics' Choice. Served at the reception for the opening of Gigi, which is a musical during our 1986 season right here at Corinth Theater Arts. 1 dozen small juicy oranges, thinly sliced. 1.5 dozen large ripe lemons, thinly sliced. Got some fruit. 1 20-ounce can of crushed pineapple. 2 11-ounce cans of mandarin oranges. 1 pint of Napoleon 4-star brandy, so some good brandy. 1/5 of good rye whiskey. I love how they don't give you a brand, they're just like good rye whiskey. 1/5 of Irish whiskey. This is already potent.
Aaron go bra.
1 pint of grenadine. 1 16-ounce jar of maraschino cherries with the juice. Not any of this like neon red stuff, the good stuff. 1 pint strong green tea. And a chilled good dry champagne. Well, if we hadn't already repainted the walls here in the Playhouse, this would probably do it. So here's how to make this. At least 2 days, preferably a week before expected use, put all the above, except the champagne, into a stone, glass, or plastic container. Do not use metal. I don't know why. Maybe it'll explode. Let this stand at room temperature, covered lightly. Stir well 2 or 3 times a day. I think they're powering their car with this. About 1 day before time to use, strain the mixture through cheesecloth and put the liquid in a closed plastic container into the freezer. It will not freeze. I won't lie. When ready to serve, put cold mixture in punch bowl and charge it with the well-chilled champagne. Use 1 cup of mixture per 1/5 champagne. Use more if you like stronger. Use very little ice in the bowl. I don't know what this tastes like, but it's called After Theater Punch. I think it is to propel you home after you leave the theater.
And I'm sure you don't remember what it tastes like.
Exactly. I think that's the point. So we'll have some after our Broadway review. Okay. Since Clay's here with me, and we've talked about this for a number of years, we're going to read a small selection from Frost Nixon. If you're not familiar with Frost Nixon, it is a play written by Peter Morgan, based on the David Frost, Richard Nixon interviews about the Watergate scandal. This is the perfect Richard Nixon. I'm not the perfect Frost at all. When we do this, inevitably, in the next season or 2, someone else will be Frost. It will not be me. There are a couple of you out there that I have in mind, but it won't be me. So what we're going to do is we're going to read a couple of these scenes just to give you a good feel like you're back here at home at CTA. It's a cold read. We're just going to go through it. We've omitted any other alternate characters, so it's just Frost and Nixon. It starts in scene 15. Frost is sitting in his hotel room, and he's a little inebriated, and the phone rings. I'll have a cheeseburger.
Sounds good. I used to love cheeseburgers, but Dr. Lundgren made me give them up, and he switched me to cottage cheese and pineapple instead. He calls them Hawaiian burgers. They don't taste like burgers at all. They taste like styrofoam. I hope I'm not disturbing.
No.
It's a Friday night. You probably have someone there whom you're entertaining.
No.
And then what are you doing? A handsome young fellow, an eligible young bachelor, alone on a Friday night?
If you must know, I'm preparing for our final session.
Ah, the all-important final session.
Yes.
Watergate. It's a small consolation to me that for the next couple of days that word will be as much of a millstone around your neck as it has been around mine. Because I guess the way you handle Watergate will determine whether these interviews are a success or a failure. Should I be nervous?
Well, I'm going to give it my best shot.
Quite right. No holds barred. No holds barred. You know, it's strange. We've sat in chairs opposite one another, talking for hours. It seems days on end, and yet I've hardly gotten to know you. One of my people, as part of the preparation of this interview, did a profile of you, and I'm sorry to say, only got around to reading it tonight. There's some interesting stuff in there. The Methodist background, modest circumstances, then off to a grand university, full of richer, posher types. Was it Oxford?
Cambridge.
Did the snobs there look down on you too? Oh, of course they did. That's our tragedy, isn't it, Mr. Frost? No matter how high we get, they still look down at us.
I really don't know what you're talking about.
Yes, you do. Come on, you know exactly. No matter how many awards or how many columns, inches are written about you, or how high the elected office is for me, it still isn't enough. Am I right? We still feel like little men. The loser they told us we were 100 times, the smart asses at college, the high ups, the well-born, the people whose respect we really wanted, really craved. Isn't that what we work so hard now? While we fight for every inch, scrambling our way up in undignified fashion, whatever hillock or mountain it is, where we never tire, where we find our energy or motivation when any subject lie down or relax. If we're honest for a minute, if we really reflect privately just for a moment, if we allow ourselves a glimpse into that shouty place we call our soul, isn't that why we're here now? The two of us, looking for a way back into the sun, into the limelight, back onto the winner's podium, because we could feel it slipping away. We were headed, both of us, for the dirt, the place the snobs always told us we'd end up, facing the dust, humiliated all the more for having tried so pitifully hard. Well, to hell with that. We're not going to let that happen, either of us. We're going to show those bums and make them choke on our continued successes, our continued headlines, our continued awards, power, and glory. We're going to make those motherfuckers choke. Am I right? By the way, I mean Richard Nixon said motherfuckers.
You are, except only one of us can win.
Yes, and I shall be your fiercest adversary. I shall come at you with everything I've got, because the limelight can only shine on one of us, and for the other, it'll be the wilderness, with nothing and no one for company. But those voices ring in our heads. You can probably tell. I've had a drink. Not too many, just one or two. But believe me, when we wake up tomorrow, I'll be focused and ready for battle. Well, good night, Mr. Frost.
Good night, Mr. President. Which President Nixon hangs up the phone, David Frost hangs up the phone, his gal Caroline says, with or without cheese, I bought burgers. David Frost says, I got to work. We move on to the final television interview with Frost and Nixon. Mr. President?
Mr. Frost.
Well, if you're anything like as candid here as you were the other night, it should be explosive.
The other night? I don't understand.
The phone call.
The phone call?
The phone call to my hotel room. The studio manager says, 5, 4, 3. Looking back over your final year in office, do you feel you ever obstructed justice or were part of a conspiracy to cover up or obstruct justice?
No, I don't. And I mentioned it. You used the term obstruction of justice. You perhaps not read the statute with regard to obstruction of justice.
As it happens, I have.
You have, you say. Well, then you'll know it doesn't just require an act, it requires a specific corrupt motive. In this case, I didn't have a corrupt motive. What I was doing was in the interest of political containment.
Be that as it may, the direct consequences of your actions would have been that 2 of the convicted burglars would have escaped criminal prosecution. How can that not be a cover-up or obstruction of justice?
I think the record shows, Mr. Frost, that far from obstructing justice, I was actually facilitating it. When Pat Gray of the FBI called me on July 6th, I said, Pat, go right ahead with your investigation. Hardly what you call obstructing justice.
That may be, but for 2 weeks prior to July 6th, we now know you were desperately trying to contain or block the investigation.
Now, hang on.
Obstructive of justice is obstruction of justice. If it's for a minute or 5 minutes, and it's no defense to say that your plan failed. I mean, if I try to rob a bank and fail, that's not defense. I still tried to rob that bank.
Now, wait a minute, Mr. Frost. There is no evidence of
The reason there is no evidence is because 18 and a half minutes of the conversation with Bob Haldeman from this June period have mysteriously been erased.
An unfortunate oversight, but Bob Haldeman is a rigorous and conscientious note taker, and his notes are there for all to see.
Well, Nye found something rather better than his notes. There's one conversation with Charles Colson in particular, which I don't think has ever been published.
Hasn't been published, you say?
No, but one of the researchers found it in Washington, where it's available to anyone who consults the records.
So, I just wondered if we'd seen it.
More than seen it, Mr. President, you spoke the actual words. It's where you say, this whole investigation rests unless one of the 7 begins to talk. That's the problem.
Well, what do we mean by one of the 7 beginning to talk?
You've claimed you first learned of the break-in on June 23rd. But this transcript clearly shows that to be a falsehood. And in the transcript on March 21st, in one conversation alone, There in black and white, I picked out, and these are your words. One, you could get $1 million and you could get it in cash. I know where it could be gotten. Two, your major guy to keep under control is Hunt. Three, don't we have to handle the Hunt situation? Four, get the $1 million. It would seem to me that would be worthwhile. Five, don't you agree that you'd better get the Hunt thing going? Six, first you've got the Hunt problem. That ought to be handled. Seven, the money can be provided. Eimerman can provide the way to deliver it. That could be done. Eight, we've no choice but to deliver it. That could be, we've no choice with Hunt but $20,000 or whatever it is, right? Nine, Christ, turn over any cash we've got. Now, it seems to me that someone running a cover-up couldn't have expressed it more clearly than that. Could they?
Let me stop you right there. You're doing something here which I'm not doing and I will not do throughout these broadcasts. You're quoting me out of context, out of order. And I might add, I've participated in these broadcasts without a single note in front of me.
Well, it's your life, Mr. President. You have always maintained that you knew nothing about any of this until March 21st. But in February, your personal lawyer came to Washington to start the raising of $219,000 of hush money to be paid to the burglars. You seriously expect us to believe you had no knowledge of that?
Nope. I believe the money was for humanitarian purposes to help disadvantaged people with their defense.
It was being delivered on the tops of phone booths with aliases and at airports by people with gloves on. That's not normally the way lawyers' fees are delivered.
Well, I've made statements to this effect before. All that was Halderman and Erlichman's business. I knew nothing. Look, you can state your conclusions, and I've stated mine, so now we can go on to the rest of it.
Hold on, right? If Halderman and Erlichman were really the ones responsible when you subsequently found out about it, why didn't you call the police and have them arrested? Isn't that just a cover-up of another kind?
Maybe I should have done. Maybe I should have called the feds into my office and said, here are the two men, haul them down to the dock, fingerprint them, and throw them in the can. But I'm just not that way. These men, Halderman and Erlichman, I knew their families, known them since they were just kids. But politically, the pressure on me to let them go became overwhelming. And so I did it. I cut off one arm, and then I cut off the other. But I'm not a good butcher. I've always maintained what they were doing, what we were all doing, was not criminal. When you're in office, you have to do a lot of things that are not, in the strictest sense of the law, legal. But you do them because they're in the greater interest of the nation.
Wait. Just so I understand correctly, are you really saying that there are certain situations where the president can decide whether it's in the best interests of the nation and do something illegal?
I'm saying that when the president does it, it's not illegal.
I'm sorry?
That's what I believe, but I realize no one else shares that view.
So that in that case, will you accept then, to clear the air once and for all, that you're a part of a cover-up and that you did break the law? And at that point in the interview, folks break in, everything stops, the interview stops, they cut to commercial. We go back to Nixon's dressing room in scene 19, and we come back in scene 20, and after this conversation has happened in Nixon's dressing room about what he's actually going to say and how he should say it, Frost comes back, the studio manager comes back in, and Nixon and David Frost have this final conversation. It's all right, he wants me to do this, to finish him off. He wants the wilderness. 5, 4, 3. Mr. President, we were talking about the mistakes you'd made, and I'm wondering, would you go further than mistakes? The word that seems not enough for people to understand.
Well, what word would you express?
My goodness, all right. Since you've asked me, there are 3 things the American people would like to hear you say. 1, there was probably more than mistakes. There was wrongdoing. Yes, it might have been a crime too. Secondly, I did abuse the power I had as president. And thirdly, I put the American people through 2 years of agony, and I apologize for that. And I know how difficult it is for anyone, especially you, but I think that people need to hear it. And I think unless you say it, you're going to be haunted for the rest of your life.
It's true. I've made mistakes. Horrendous ones. Ones that were worthy of a president. ones that did not meet the standards of excellence that I always dreamed of as a young boy. But if you remember, it was a difficult time. I've been caught up in a five-front war against a partisan media, a partisan House of Congress, a partisan urban committee. But yes, I'd have to admit there were times I did not fully meet that responsibility and was involved in a cover-up, as you call it. But for all the mistakes, I have a very deep regret. If you want me to get down on the floor and grovel, no, never. I still insist they were mistakes of the heart, not mistakes of the head, but they were my mistakes, and I don't blame anyone else. I brought myself down. I gave them a sword, and they stuck it in, and they twisted it with relish. And I guess if I'd been in their position, I'd have done the same.
And the American people?
Well, I just hope I haven't. I let them down. I let down my friends, down the country. Worst of all, I let down our system of government and the dreams of all those young people that ought to get into government, but now think it's too corrupt and the rest. I let the American people down, and I have to carry that burden with me the rest of my life. My political life is over.
Frost Nixon. So we live in a time where a lot of things are still relevant. Richard Nixon was the smartest man to ever hold the office of the presidency, and the great thing is that the interviews with David Frost and President Nixon are now in public domain.
That's
and
right.
You can watch them on YouTube. I highly encourage you to do that. And they are the crux of what is in this play by Peter Morgan. It's a really, really good work, and is, like I said, really, really relevant.
And if you watch those, keep in mind that Nixon was in fact doing that without notes at all,
None.
and holds his own with Frost toe to toe. Nixon really was he was too smart for his own good.
He was a genius. Richard Nixon. He was a certified genius,
Yeah.
right? Frost Nixon. We're going to look at what we do next when we do some reading. But if you would like to be involved with our No Fear Shakespeare, or you have a suggestion for us, let us know on our Facebook page, and we'll call this over and done. Clay, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you all for watching.
And we'll see you soon where theater comes alive. Okay, bye.